Hello and welcome. This is Mari Robeson of Love Lulu Creative, a podcast that supports and celebrates artists and creative entrepreneurs while giving back to the community in a unique and meaningful way. This is episode number 3. I am so excited to share with you today one of my absolute favorite illustrators, Tug Rice. Tug will be my featured artist for the month of October. So what that means is during the month of October, if you choose to purchase any of Tug's art in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, under the Give Back category, you'll find 3 pieces of his work. If you purchase one of those pieces, or all 3, proceeds will go to Tug because we want to support the artist, and then the remaining proceeds will go to the Louise Monforte Memorial Art Scholarship for the next generation of artists. So I'm really excited about all of that because I love his artwork. But let me tell you, Tug is more than just an artist. He is an incredible actor. He actually has a BFA in acting from a very prestigious school, Carnegie Mellon University. He's also a composer and a writer, and he plays the piano beautifully. Things I wish I had. I could be able to do. I would love to play the piano, but he's amazing. He's so talented, and he's a self-taught artist. So I think this is really interesting for all of you out there who are thinking about maybe pursuing a career in the arts. Tug is self-taught, and it worked out because his artwork is now in Travel and Leisure. It's been in the Wall Street Journal. It's been in Vogue. And when we recorded this episode, he couldn't say at the time, but now the news is out. He has a wonderful spread in, Harper's Bazaar magazine, which is great. And his client was Harry Winston of all the most beautiful jewelry on the planet. So, I mean, wow, how does that even happen? Well, you know what? Tug is so generous. He shares all of that information with us, and it's super inspiring. So I hope that you will stay tuned for this fascinating interview with Tug Rice. Hi, Tug. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
I'm so excited to talk to you.
I am too.
Okay, so this is what's really interesting, I think, about you. You're an actor, you're a writer. You didn't put down that you're a musician, but you play the piano beautifully.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do. And now you are an artist, which none of that surprises me. But what I thought was really kind of interesting about your story was that you didn't think you were going to pursue art until it was something that came to you later.
Oh, I never knew what an illustrator did. I never thought about what that meant. I never dreamed of doing that. It really just happened in the most organic way, which was amazing. And, I spent a lot of time thinking about what I wanted to do, and that never came up. So it really kind of was meant to be, I think.
I have such a theory on this, but we'll get to that eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to when you were little. So you're from Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you would take lots of trips to New York?
Yeah, we'd go to New York. We'd go to the theater. We'd go to museums. So I always had this love affair with New York, which I think you can tell in my work that I do still. But
exactly, yeah.
It was always I just always felt so happy in the city and just interested in the people and the smells and the culture and all that stuff. And I remember it from a really early age, not so much in what I was drawing at the time, but just, if I was having a bad day or something, I would think about being in New York, and that always would make me happy.
How interesting.
Yeah.
I love that because that definitely comes through in the artwork that you're doing now. But
good.
did you always want to, so what were you most passionate about as a child? Was it acting that you wanted to pursue? When did that click in with you?
I think I probably drew before anything else, but for whatever reason, that didn't occur to me to do anything with that. I think because I didn't know what that reality was like, what it actually meant to be an artist. And of course, there are lots of realities. You can be a fine artist in galleries. You can be an illustrator. You can go into animation, whatever. But I think I discovered the theater pretty early on. And so I studied that every day for 8 years, really, with high school and college.
Right. So you went to a pretty prestigious university. You went to Carnegie Mellon.
Yeah.
And you have a BFA in acting. So you must have really loved it.
I did. And I still do.
Yeah,
I still do. It's, I've never felt the pressure to try to choose one thing, which is really great.
Great.
Yeah. And I think when I got to Carnegie Mellon, the recession hit. And we were told it's going to be really hard, harder than usual. And there won't be as many jobs, and you're going to have to create your own work. And so I think we were all conditioned to, or encouraged to, try lots of different things. So a lot of people that I know are actors, but they're also writers, or they're artists / musicians, composers, whatever. So it's really interesting because people are always kind of surprised that I do lots of things, but to me, it's just, I don't know, it's part of being interested in lots of things, and also kind of out of necessity. There just isn't that much work for one particular career, or at least, the acting pool is it's just so full. It's a really tough thing to do. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's actually makes complete sense to me. I've been a dancer my whole life, and I actually really loved choreography. And choreography was just another way to tell a story, just like artwork does. So like your art, your paintings or your sketches, they tell a story of being in New York, and they're happy and joyful, and you can feel that energy from when you were a child and why you love it so much. But you're still telling a story, whether you're acting or you're playing a piece of music, or it's, of course, why wouldn't you be an artist?
Right.
To me, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and it's like you have to have a point of view, and that's something that I'm glad somebody told me early on, in particular with illustration, but I think with anything, like it's never just a pretty picture. It's never just, a beautiful dance. It has to have a point of view across the board. So I think, all of my interests have bled into each other and have helped inform the other. So I'm glad I had my training in acting, because it's about storytelling, and that does apply to everything.
What I love about an actual piece of physical artwork, though, is it's like you can go to the play, and for that moment, the audience member is taken to another place, and they can enjoy this experience of kind of disappearing into the story. But then it's over. Whereas when you have a piece of artwork on the wall, it's something you can look at and go there anytime.
Totally. Yeah.
It's not that it has more longevity. It's just a different experience that, it's important, I think. And you're absolutely right about a point of view. I also think that, as artists, we're telling a story, but are we bringing awareness to something that needs to be talked about, but bringing it kind of in a gentler way to the people? Or, there's just so many different aspects of what art can mean, and how that person on the other end is going to receive it as well.
Yeah, it can be a really powerful thing, we have to be aware of the potential for it to be powerful. Even if we don't, even if our goal is to just let people forget about the chaos of their world for a couple of minutes, that has to be a conscious decision, I think.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I really feel like the artists are like, we are creating these things to, even if it's just, everybody's life is really difficult. Everyone's got something they're working on. And if it isn't, there will be a time when it is. So there's that little piece of art where it can transcend you and remind you that things are going to be okay, and that the world at our core, we're actually a beautiful place. And sometimes it's hard to remember that. So it is a responsibility to be an artist, and to, I call them the light makers, but to bring art into the world, because it's important.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
It's my message.
I know.
I mean, art defines cultures. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's everything. So how amazingly, this is why I wanted to talk to you, because you are blessed in so many avenues of being an artist. I mean, you truly embody the word that of being an artist. And I'm so glad that you didn't just pick one avenue and stick to it, because we're multifaceted people. We do many different things, and you're doing it on so many levels, and you're bringing so much happiness to so many people. It's such a gift.
Thank you.
I'm such a super fan.
Oh, likewise.
So you graduate from Carnegie Mellon and you're doing acting, or did you?
Yeah, mostly acting. Yeah. So I went to New York and loved it, and have pretty much been here since. And I was doing plays and always drawing for myself, just at home. I'd fill sketchbooks. But truly never, yeah. I mean, I remember like growing up, my parents would go to the grocery store or whatever, and they'd bring home like tablets, like spiral, notebooks. And I don't know, they were lined paper. I don't know why they weren't like actual drawing sheets, but I would just cover them anyway with, I probably have hundreds of them, in my parents' basement. And so I continued to do that forever. And it wasn't until like, I don't know, 5 years or 4 years out of school that I was having lunch in New York with a friend who's a painter, and she said she was applying, submitting a work for a group show in Jersey City, and she said, "Well, you paint, you should submit too." And I thought, okay, and didn't really think anything of it, and I got in, and the painting sold, and that was really great. And then that led somehow, which I still don't quite know how, to being offered a solo show in the West Village in New York.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was just, and again, it was like, I think what is so beautiful about it to me is that it was not planned or, orchestrated or in any way. It was just like the most natural thing. And yeah, so that was sort of the trajectory. And then I think because I had the show in New York, I was able to get interest from industry people and my agent and all that stuff. So that was really great. But at the same time, doing all that, I was also posting pretty much every day on Instagram and talking to people like you, and sharing ideas and things. And really, that I think was my training, because I didn't go to art school, but just having to do a piece every single day. I was developing a style and a point of view and all that. So I think that combined with the gallery shows, that was sort of how it all happened.
I really love how organically that evolved for you. And I think that's something that I'd like to touch upon. I've done the 100-day painting every day. I've done it 3 times.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow.
I'm glad I'm not the only person who hoards their journals, because I have so many of them. My poor kids, I told them, you just have a bonfire and throw everything in there.
Oh no, never.
But going back to that doing something every single day and discovering your style, I think that's a really, really critical thing to touch upon. If you want to be an artist, you don't have to just out the gate have this this look and start copying people and do all this stuff. It's give yourself the time to do something every day consistently, and it will eventually tell you what you are supposed to be doing. And that is, you just said exactly how I felt when I was going through that process. It was like I kept gravitating towards painting these really whimsical little rooms because I'm probably a frustrated interior designer and never got to paint, never got to do these kind of rooms. So, but there's a whole kind of a story of where our inspiration comes from, but that consistency, and like, you weren't looking to be in a show. You weren't looking to be discovered or anything. You were like, I'm just going to do this every single day. And then I remember watching that going, holy cow, who is this guy? This guy has got some real talent going on here, and I want everything.
Wow. Well, first of all, I have to say 2 things. First of all, yes, that all was happening where I was doing something diligently every day, and I didn't think about what I was doing, and I didn't I wasn't consciously trying to build a style or, I don't know. I wasn't thinking about who my inspiration was or anything. It just was happening.
Right.
And I've always kind of let other people figure that out, or for themselves if they have to compare me to other artists or figure out, where some seeds were planted, because I don't think about that. But the other thing that I have to bring up is how we met, because this podcast I know is all about sharing experiences and advice and sending the elevator down, which is an expression that I love.
I love that.
Isn't that great? But we met on Instagram,
really
and I have to tell your listeners, because you really practice what you preach. We met and we were talking, and I think I had no idea really what I was doing. This was a couple of years ago, and I asked for advice, and instead of just giving me something generic or ignoring me, you actually called me, and we had a great conversation. And so that stuck with me. First of all, you gave me great advice, but just the fact that you were willing to, you don't hoard your experiences. You told me things that had worked for you, things that hadn't worked. And that was really, really nice of you to do.
Wow. Well, I'm a huge proponent of collaboration over competition. I think we all have a very special voice, and we all need to bring it into the world. God, you made me tear up a little bit. I swear, I cannot get through a single podcast. There's always that moment. But yeah, I don't see any competition. I just want more of it. Like, I want everyone to make art. I want the whole world to be filled up with it. I think it would be.
Well, I do too, and because I think sometimes we get scared that like our identity or our voice is going to be like stolen or something, but that just doesn't happen. I mean, I've been in situations where I was asked to draw something in a group setting with other artists, and we were all given the same thing, and we were actually told, here's how you draw it, these are the tools, this is exactly how to do it. And everybody's piece looks different at the end of it, So you can tell somebody exactly how you do it, and they're still not going to be able to do what you do. And I think that's where a lot of illustrators can get frustrated when they're working with an art director who has a very clear image of what they want, and they worry that they're going to lose part of their voice. But I just feel like as long as you're doing it and you're creating it, I mean, the work is there, it's yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's true. It's a different game to work commercially when you have to like come up with a certain design. But I think a good art instructor and a really good art director will give some direction and then say, you come up with it. And then then it's a collaboration. Then maybe we tweak this, or maybe we add this. What if we do this? I mean, that person who's in the art director position should be sharing their knowledge, but not helping that younger artist grow and find it. And that's the way you come up with these really beautiful graphics, that are these collaborative things, I think, in that situation. But in your situation, have you have always kind of, no pun intended, been drawn to drawing like these little vignettes of New York City or
it was always people. I always drew people. I don't think there was ever a single classroom that I was in where I wasn't drawing a person during class. Sometimes taking notes too, but mostly drawing people, and just filling notebooks with people doing things, portraits or people actively doing things. So I think also having that theater background, there's, I want to create narrative pieces. And so I kind of think of them as like tableaus. And, in New York, you're just surrounded by people in a way that you aren't in a lot of other cities.
Like where I live.
Well, anywhere where you're driving, you're alone a lot more. In New York, you're just, whether you like it or not, you're surrounded by people. And so you just have to open your eyes and you see something that, could be the cover of the New Yorker.
I think that's what I love, that you just capture these moments in time, and I get so drawn into these rooms. Like, I want to know who is that, and what's happening? What are they talking about? Like, I mean, and then you have some more provocative pieces. I mean, I think my absolute favorite piece of yours is your red light. I just
really?
was so
Cool.
drawn to it for some reason. I mean, I don't know what that says about me. We don't need Freud in the room, but
No.
I really love that one, and I love of course, I love your dancers are fun. I'm going kind of way back.
Yeah.
There was this book that I had as a little girl, and it was just, I mean, it's old. It's probably, I'm going to show it to you. It's a very old book, and it's all illustrations of almost cartoon, but more sketches and illustrations of New York City and stories of that. And I mean, I looked at that book so much when I was a little kid. I think the binder is off of it now because it's been so loved by me. So when I saw your work, it reminded me of that. And I think that's how people are going to, take their experience into when they look at a piece of art. And for me, I'm from New Jersey, so that was a joyful memory too. All these little, places that I see that you're drawing. So
I love that.
I just love it. Okay, so the other thing I really love about your work is it's simple. It's not like this overly thought out, complicated thing, and it's a few lines on a paper that tell create this image, and now you're switched over. So now you're doing the same thing, but you're doing digitally, correct?
Yeah.
So how did that process happen for you?
Well, I started with watercolor and ink, and really liked it. The more I think about a piece, the worse it becomes. I really do think it needs to look effortless, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it took no effort or little effort, but it's like anything. If you go to an opera, you want to feel like there's ease coming from that stage, that the singer is sort of effortlessly doing this, even though she's not. If you really broke it down, there's technique and there's, but and with illustration, because it's that first glimpse that matters, because you're selling something. It should feel, I think, easy and sort of effortless. So
that is okay. I'm just having a little Oprah aha moment right here.
Oh my God.
Because it's the same with dance, like all the years of training and technical stuff. And then when the dancer gets on stage, she makes it look like she just easily flies through the air and does 10 pirouettes, And you're right. It is true with art. Like, it should look like it's just this effortless moment that happened on paper, but there is years of history behind that.
Yeah. I mean, we shouldn't see the technique or the homework, we should just see this beautiful thing, like you said, with like flying through the air. So for me, like, oil was never going to be my medium. It takes too long. I don't have the patience, and I don't have the skill for it. And acrylic too. So watercolor was great, and ink was great because I could kind of just scratch it out and then it would dry and I could move on. And as I started to work on more editorial jobs and commercial jobs, I realized that things need to be emailed at the end of the day. And so I could either photograph work on paper or scan it and then send it over, or I could just have it done digitally from the beginning. And I'm really, like, your work photographs really well. You figured out a way to do it well. I'm not that good at it. So my stuff would always get lost in translation when I would do it on paper and then try to, send it off digitally. So I wanted to learn to work digitally.
I scan mine, and I do use Photoshop to
Yeah, I mean, I think most people you have to clean up a little bit, but I don't know. I'm such a purist in terms of, like, I love books. I don't love ebooks. I hate ebooks. So working digitally is not something I would have thought I wanted to do, but I've fallen in love with it. And I think the reason is I basically have the same process that I'm using with watercolor and ink. So I'm using a pen tool, a brush tool, and an eraser. And that's it. I mean, I probably use like 0.1% of the tools on Photoshop because I don't know how to use them. So it's kind of the same process for me.
Mm-hmm. It does give you a little bit more, like you can erase a line if it didn't quite vibe right. You know, it's a little easier.
Right. I feel like I can take more risks because I'm not thinking about this is my last sheet of paper, or, you know, I'm running low on ink, or I have to clean up I just don't think about that. I can take more risks. Now, the other side of that, though, is there's so many happy accidents that happen when you're working on paper.
There is, but I can tell you, I have hundreds of little watercolors I've done where I like got to a point with it and I was like, oh, I really love this, but now should I change the color over here? And then I'll change the color. And I'm like, dang it, why did I do that?
Really? Yeah. And working for a client
and
too,
vice versa too. It can also be a happy accident. Yeah.
But when somebody is saying, okay, we love it, but can you have her looking this way instead of that way?
Yeah.
It's hard if you're working on paper, you have to start over.
Yeah. I've had that conversation.
That's really tough. I don't think I would do well with that. So it's easy for me to make adjustments. And I also I kind of pat myself on the back when somebody thinks that it's watercolor and it's digital, because it's not like I'm trying to trick people, but it's cool if people think that. But also,
I want to ask you about that. You did the three. Oh shoot, what was it called? It's famous.
Graces.
Yeah, the three graces, and it looked like it was on watercolor paper. Was that on a tablet? Did you do that?
Yeah, that was digital. Yeah.
You're kidding. So you can actually do like a watercolor paper in the background. I'm going to have to revisit this.
You are, because as you're painting on top of it, well, digitally painting, it really does feel like the real thing. It's kind of a crazy thing.
Oh, wow.
Working on a flat white.
Well, what are you working on? What's the equipment that you're using?
It's kind of archaic at this point. I'm using a stylus and a Wacom tablet.
Oh, okay.
And my laptop. So I'm actually not even drawing on a Surface tablet. This is kind of like not the most up-to-date way of doing it, but it's just the way that I learned. And I feel really confident with it. And I'm also, I'm proud to work digitally. I think that I don't know. It's really a cool method. And I don't know. I love being able to bring my laptop to Starbucks and work. It's just, there's so much freedom. And I don't know. I can't really say that I miss working with watercolor. And in fact, I'm kind of scared to work with watercolor at this point.
It can be intimidating.
Yeah. I wasn't when I started, but now it's like everything's so final. As soon as you put it, it's like, oh my God. Yeah.
Well, I worked with acrylic paints for years and years and years. And then I have a graphic design background. So I always was like, everything was in the lines and everything. And I was like, I have to break out of this. I love like what you do. I could never draw like that because it's too, like I can't do that loose style and make it look good, but I wanted to kind of get out of my head and do something that I had to do something quickly and work with it. And so I picked up watercolor only I don't know, 4 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I started really kind of playing with it. And it's super intimidating because sometimes it just does its own thing. You're like, well, okay. But I'm starting just on the tip of like understanding how to work with it.
And the paper has so much to do with it too. Like I love Arches paper because I love the history of it and I love the texture and the color, but it's not smooth. And so it's like a completely different medium than working with a paper that's not grainy and it's totally smooth, where the paint just kind of dances on the paper. I don't know. I wasn't scared of it when I started because I didn't know any better. But now I'm kind of petrified of it, to be honest.
Oh, well, you got to push through that fear.
I know. but I'm still going to sound digital because
you found your thing. I mean, don't reinvent the wheel. If you love it, you stick with it. I love it too. I think you found it. I want to ask you something really about. I kind of dug into your background a little bit, and you did a residence, an artist residence at the Ace Hotel, and could you tell me a little bit, can tell all of us a little bit of that? Because that sounds so intriguing, what you did there.
Oh yeah. I think they've kind of shifted what their artist in residence program looks like, but for a while they would invite an artist every Sunday to stay at the hotel in New York, and just they would give them a room, and Sunday to Monday they could just create anything they wanted. And I guess the idea was to share it somehow with the hotel, but it could be anything. It could be a work on paper, it could be a canvas. I mean, literally anything. They just give you this great room with a guitar, a Martin guitar, and every kind of art supply you could imagine. And it's in the attic, so it's a really cool thing. And when they asked me to do it, they wanted me to come every Sunday in March. And this was when all the art fairs were happening. So Volta and the Armory and Spring Break and Art on Paper. So they got me passes to all of those, and I went and I photographed things, and I sort of observed people observing the art. And the idea was to create what they called courtroom style illustrations. And so then I would go stay at the hotel on Sunday nights, and I would draw. And I think I ended up with, I don't know how many, like 3 images per art fair. So yeah, that was really cool. And
I just think it's such a, what a great marketing idea for the hotel. I mean, to do that, I just never had heard of that. And I think that's really,
they're really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're constantly changing it and trying things. And now I think they're doing something with musicians where they're encouraging musicians to stay over and create some kind of music on Sunday nights. So yeah, and that started from Instagram. I had a meeting across the street, and I saw the hotel, and I always loved the hotel, and I loved the coffee shop there. And so I decided to sketch it, and I put it on Instagram, and I tagged them just so that people would know where I was. And they saw it, and they were like, "Oh, you should come do this thing in March." So
that's so great. Artists, all of you artists need to be on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, it's you kind of do. It's your portfolio, and every art director from every magazine, and they're all there. And it's not, I'm an actor and I'm a composer and a writer, but it's not a great medium for those because it just isn't. But with art is immediate, and the work is right there. And But
I love that you share those other aspects of what you're doing. It just kind of gives the art even more meaning. You're this actor, you're living in New York, you're composing this, and you're playing this music, and you do this beautiful art. It's like, it's so fabulous.
It's crazy.
Okay, but then you were out in Palm Springs, and I did not know about this, and I should have gone to your show. But that's about 6 hours from where I am. But
yeah, I
would have gone.
Yeah.
So how did that? Was that also an Instagram?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and so that was my second solo show, which was all digital, and that opened in April. And I went out there and created a series of images based on my impressions of Palm Springs for Grace Home Gallery. And that was really fun. And it was great because if you've been there, you know how colorful everything is. And I was creating the works in New York during a really gloomy winter. So, everything, I find like a lot of the work I do in New York is kind of gray and muted and whatever, with pops of color here and there. But the Palm Springs show had to be bright and, light and fun. So it was really cool to work on that at that time.
That's interesting. I've had conversations with different artists that live in different regions of the country, and they all, and there's a color thing. It's a thing.
Right. No, it really is.
So that's very interesting that you would share that. Okay. And the other thing I really love are those pocket squares that you designed. Are you still doing those?
No, I did 2. I guess it was like a year ago for Olaf Nefenius, who's a Swedish menswear writer, and he has a great Instagram, Olaf 1982. and he has a shop online where he sells pocket squares and other clothing for men and accessories. And so he has artists design these squares. And so that was really cool. And I wear them, you know, a lot.
They totally fit you. I mean, that's
Yeah.
definitely something. I mean, your artwork could be applied onto so many different products.
Oh.
And that's an excellent one, actually. I can't. I've said this to you before. Like, I'm dying for you to do wallpaper because
thank you. I would really like to. You know, I don't think too much about things I want to do. I kind of just every day wake up and go, okay, what's on the, you know, what's coming today? And usually something exciting is, I either have to work on something or something comes up. So I just kind of go day to day, but wallpaper is something I would really like to do in the near future.
Oh yeah, you would be great.
I love it.
You mentioned earlier that you had an agent. Was that an acting agent or is that an artist agent?
I do have an acting agent and I have an illustration agent too. Yeah.
Oh, you do. So
yeah.
that's how did that come about?
I was doing my solo show in New York, and I thought this is a great opportunity to invite people. And you know, it's hard to email people blindly and try to get them interested in your work without having something to say, you know, hey, here, you can see this in person or whatever. So I kind of took advantage of that. And I ended up connecting with Illustration Division and just hitting it off really well with them. And so we've been working together for a while now, and it's just a really, really great thing. And yeah, it's been really, I've because I didn't go to art school, I never really had mentors in the art world. So they've sort of guided me toward different things and sort of steered me in the right direction and looked at things in a big picture kind of way, which is great because then I can focus on the project at hand. And you know, a lot of the work initially still comes through Instagram or my website, but it's great to be able to send it off then and focus on the work.
I think having an agent, if you're trying to do editorial work, and you have done some very impressive editorial work, Wall Street Journal and Travel and Leisure. I mean, that's I don't know if your agent was involved in that, but that's when an agent can be very handy if that's the type of work that you want to get into. That's very interesting. Okay, so today, like, what are you going to go do today?
Well, this was the most exciting thing.
Yay!
So this was the big thing.
Me too.
Yeah, good. But before we talked, I was playing the piano for like a half hour just to kind of, you know, whatever, warm up my bones or whatever, and my mind, and kind of relax, because it's a very therapeutic thing too.
Oh.
And I'm working on a project for the Carlisle Hotel right now.
Super exciting.
So it's a pretty good amount of images. So I'm doing that now. And let's see what else. I have some private commissions I'm working on, and I guess that's kind of the big thing right now.
Well, that sounds like a lot of work. I mean, is that typically how long does it take you to do an illustration?
If it's just for me or it's for something I'm going to just share online, it doesn't take more than a few hours. But sometimes less than that, you know, depending on how involved it is. But, you know, and the same for like a first draft for an editorial project. And some of those go so quickly. The process is like a 3-day thing with including revisions, you know. So I do work quickly, but I think that's also because, like I said before, the work is always better for me when it's kind of has brevity to it.
Yeah. Wow. So are you going to be doing any acting? Because that is a full plate.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been auditioning for some things, and it's tough to do both. It's possible. Like this summer, I was doing a play for 10 weeks, and also working on a lot of illustration projects. And once the show opened, I thought, okay, I've got my days free, and then I just have to go to the theater at night. But you end up not really having a life, because you're working all day at the computer. Then it's time to go, and it's not just going to the theater. It's warming up and getting there and getting sort of revved up for it. So it requires a lot of discipline, and I don't know, it's tough, but I want to keep doing everything that I want to keep doing. So I'm learning how to manage my time.
It's your year of yes to everything.
Yes. And also no. I'm also learning, like, there are things that it's okay to say no to, because I think when you start out, you're just so happy to work, and you're happy that somebody wants to work with you and is interested in what you do.
Sure.
And so I am learning that sometimes you do have to look at the big picture, and you also have to say, is this actually going to make me happy?
I love that saying. I don't even know where it came from, but if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no.
I've never heard that, but I love that.
That's kind of true. It's like, if you're not like 100% all in, like, that sounds awesome, I want to do that, then just don't do it. Go.
Right.
Because those opportunities are going to always keep unfolding before you.
And, the other thing is, there's always somebody else who it will be a hell yes for.
Right.
And that's part of it, like there have been things where I just thought, I've done something similar already, or I just don't want to do that. I don't have time for it, whatever. And so, then somebody else gets to do it. And that's how I've gotten jobs in the past too, where somebody else thought, I'm going to hold out for the next thing.
I like that.
It's another way of sending the elevator back down.
I love that.
I do too.
That's gonna show up. I can say that one a lot.
It's like the new logo.
I know.
don't remember who told me that, but it's a good.
It's
a good
good. It's good. We've got to lift each other up. I love it. Okay, so what was the best advice that you have ever received in regards to anything creative in your life, whether it be acting or art or anything?
When I was in acting school, I had a teacher who told me there are times when you are going to be working like a surgeon. You're going to be very serious and cautious and focused and intense, and you know exactly what you're doing, and everything's sort of methodical, and that's a really good thing. But there's got to be times when you're like a mad scientist, and you're just throwing things around and not paying attention to right or wrong, and then you just create really amazing work that way. And it really, it applies. I understood what it meant as an actor, and now as an illustrator, it makes so much sense to me, because it's like you have to be kind of crazy sometimes. But then, especially when you're working with an art director and you're working with revisions, you do have to put on that kind of surgeon's cap and really look at it in a methodical way. And so I think it's about having that balance of the two. You need both. Absolutely.
That's so great. Now my husband won't think I'm crazy, since you just validated that point.
Well, we are crazy, like there has to be, we have to give ourselves permission to be crazy.
I totally agree. That's some good words of advice. I like that.
Yeah, it stuck with me.
It's going to stick with me too. Good. And now I just would love to know what you would say to your younger self, or someone maybe, like I always kind of bring my daughter as a graphic designer, but she's still in college studying it. Like, what would be your advice to someone who's going to pursue a career, a creative, artistic career?
Well, I think because there's so much work out there, I mean, we talked about Instagram. It's like everybody's portfolio is out in the world. There's sometimes this desire to try to fit in a box and have a really strong voice, which you do need to have. But I think we also have to allow ourselves to experiment and never lose like the curiosity. Like I never want to lose that kind of naive innocence that I had when I first started working, because I had no idea what I was doing. And now, luckily, I do know, so I can work professionally, but I never want to lose that curiosity, because you know, sometimes you do have to say, okay, here's what I offer, here's my thing. And in the beginning, I think that is helpful. But then you have to spread your wings a little bit and try new things. And people will tell you what's working and what's not. You know, I mean, that's their job. Like you'll know if something
right.
You know, and so I think also it's about finding people who you trust, a couple people who you can run things by and show things to, and, you know, listen to them, and don't be afraid to try drawing with crayons if you've never drawn with crayons, or trying oil paint. You know, I think you just never know what's going to hit. I didn't know digital illustration was going to be such a part of what I do. But I'm glad I just one day decided to try.
Right. You have to begin.
Right.
You just have to begin.
Before you're ready, before you think you're ready.
Right.
And it's okay to learn on the job. And that's something
that's how we're all learning.
Absolutely.
Nobody has all the answers.
Nobody just is suddenly ready and then they start. I mean, you learn from doing it.
Right. And just don't wait. Like just start putting it out there. It's okay. And sometimes it's okay if it's not well received. It's for your own personal growth. You know, it's not going to define you if it doesn't get, you know,
no, and the more you put out, the less you're going to be deterred when something doesn't get a great response, because it's, you know, who cares? Create the next thing and put that out there.
Right. Oh, you're such a joy. I am like leaning into my microphone. I'm so enthralled in this conversation.
Oh my God. Well, me too. This is so fun.
Oh gosh, I just appreciate it. And I know you have some really big news that is coming out, but I'm not going to say anything about it. But people will have to follow you and know that there's something ginormous happening. And I couldn't be happier for you. And just remember us. I knew you when.
Please. Well, I'm so glad you're doing this podcast. It's so important, and I'm so flattered that you asked me to be part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just so beyond thrilled to share this story, and it's going to be so helpful to so many people. I just appreciate it so much, Tug.
Oh, good. Thank you so much.
All right, signing off. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've liked this podcast and you'd like to support it even more, you can join me over on patreon.com/Mari Robeson and become a patron of mine. If you're a patron of mine, you'll receive bonus episodes every month, only for patrons. You'll also receive 20% off all the merchandise in my online shop, marirobeson.bigcartel, and you will be receiving free printables every month that will be of my artwork, and they're some really fun things. You can follow along on Instagram and you can see what I'm creating just for my patrons. I would deeply appreciate it. It would help me keep the lights on, and it would help me pay all the fees that it takes to put together a podcast like this so that I can keep supporting all the artists, keep bringing you great information, keep paying it forward to the next generation of artists. It's just a wonderful thing, and I would really deeply appreciate your support.